Welcome to Dear Diaspora, a podcast celebrating the African diaspora and the change makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs working to make our world a better one to live in. I'm your host, Ndulwa Kowa. Let's get started. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first official episode of Dear Diaspora. We had the most amazing guest for this first episode. She's the co-founder of Afromaha, a platform created to connect, foster creativity, and engage the African diaspora in the local community. Judy Kiagiri is one of the sweetest ladies you'll ever meet, and we had a great conversation just about her experience living as a Kenyan here in the United States, how diverse the African diaspora is in Omaha, Nebraska. And we also got to chat about Afromaha's upcoming African Culture Festival. So this festival is happening on September 14th in Omaha, Nebraska at Stinson Park. You can learn more about Afromaha and the festival at afromaha.com. And all right, y'all, here's my conversation with Judy Kiagiri. Aw, I'm so excited for this conversation.
I am, and I'm so sorry. I have like my super morning voice. I've not even had coffee. At least when I drink coffee, like the heat makes my voice more limber. But oh well, this is me.
You're
And
totally fine. Yeah, I rushed to make a cup of tea because I was like, ooh, I don't know what my voice is gonna sound
I
like.
know
So
exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, I should make coffee. Should I make coffee? Do I have time? No, I don't. Okay, well, whatever. It is what it is.
So I really wanted to get to just know you a little bit better, and really know the motivation behind some of the work that you're doing with Afro Omaha, and just kind of how you ended up around here in Omaha, Nebraska, and things
Right.
like that. So yeah, so how did you end up in Omaha?
Well, first, thank you for even asking me to be like one of your very wonderful interviewees. I think this is a great thing that you're doing about, kind of just reaching out to the different members of the diaspora, and just kind of hearing those stories like firsthand, right? So, always a pleasure to talk with you, Ndulwa. So, how did I end up in Omaha, Nebraska? So, I'm originally from Kenya, you know that. And I came to the US on an F1, which is a student visa. So, I actually went to school in Missouri, Missouri State. Go Bears! Woo woo!
Okay.
I know. And I actually, so while I was there in my junior year, I met a guy through a professor of ours. We're doing international relations classes, just because I wanted to, and they were electives. And I got an internship that year from that professor, and the internship was going to be in DC. I'd never lived in DC, didn't know anything about DC, but he was like, well, let me connect you to this guy who was my intern last year, and he can give you, the lowdown of where to live, blah, 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 all that good stuff. So introduced me to this guy, and this guy ended up being my husband, well, now ex, but husband, and he was from Omaha, Nebraska. Actually, he's from Ralston, Nebraska, which is like, a small, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not call it suburb, but yeah, it's here. It's considered as part of Omaha, and that's how we ended up here after lots of stints in several, in different states and then overseas, and then we decided to move back to Omaha, Nebraska. And even though we're not together, I chose to still stay in Omaha just because, life is comfortable in Omaha. It's good. It's easy to get around, good schools, all the good things. A little different in terms of diversity, but that's why I stayed. So,
Right, totally. So so how long have you been in Omaha, and what's your experience been like kind of being an African living in Omaha?
so I moved to Omaha summer of 2010. I did do a stint in Portland for about 2 years in between, since, but experience living in Omaha as an African. I mean, for the most part, it's been good. Most of my time here in Omaha has been spent working for an organization that is not based in Omaha. So I work from home and I traveled a ton, but Omaha was my base, right? I did
Nice.
do, yeah, I mean, it was really good and it's still really good. I had two stints working for two local organizations here. I actually worked in Lincoln for like the Department of Insurance for a few months as well. But, um, you know, there's quite a few Africans here, and the experiences are very varying, right? In Omaha, so
Totally.
there are those Africans who come here to go to school. There are those who come, professionally, like they get recruited to come here on an H-1B or whatever it is, like the more professional um, engineers, doctors, etc. And then those who came here as immigrants, as refugees,
Mm-hmm.
and then just people transplanted from different states. So, a huge, huge African community, but a little insular in those different pockets, like I mentioned.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, a bit interesting in terms of kind of reaching out and trying to connect with people who on face value, we're all Africans, but again, the experiences have been very different, right? My
Definitely.
experience has been, I mean, I guess very traditional in terms of I came, went to school, I got a job. I kind of assimilate more easily, or just in general,
Mm-hmm.
I've tended to assimilate more easily just because I could switch really well. Hey,
Oh my gosh. It's a thing for sure.
it is a thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been interesting because on face value, everybody sees you're black and they treat you as black in terms of how they interact with you,
Mm.
right? Until you open your mouth and you talk to people, and then somehow there's like a little bit of a distinction kind of made. I don't know if people realize that implicit, like, you know what I mean? It's almost subconscious, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, I guess it depends on like who you're talking to, but it definitely, their perception changes when they find out like, oh, you're African and you're not African American, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, if anyone is treating you at face value, they will all treat you the same. You know what I mean? Not all, but for the most part, they will. And that's, again, from their perspective, their point of view. I haven't had really, like, there's just the usual, like, if you go to Lee's, the hair store,
Mm.
they'll follow you around or watch you like a hawk. And I'm just like, dude.
I know, like really, I'm just trying to buy some hair.
I
Like,
know. I have short hair, zero interest in taking products. Thank you very much.
oh my gosh.
Um, but also like professionally, right? On the professional, like when I worked at the Department of Insurance down in Lincoln, I was one of the two Black people in that entire 100+ staffing.
Wow.
Um, when I worked at Metro, the bus company, I was the Black person in a management role. I mean, we had a lot of other staff who were Black, but they were in service or environmental services or you know bus drivers or so they
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have anybody in a professional setting who was African American or African or Afro Latino, whatever, right? Just Black.
Wow.
And the same thing, well, actually, I did a short stint at UNMC. I worked with neurological sciences. They had a huge grant. I was a grant administrator there. And they were a little more diverse in that office, surprisingly. But across the campus, it's still, it's not representative of the community that we're living in, meaning that tons of Black people, these tons of other minorities, and it's not reflected, right? We're still working in a very white space here in Nebraska, something very similar to when I lived in Portland. It's just you know
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I recently visited Portland. It was, yeah, quite white.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it
I
was
mean, and
crazy.
yeah, I mean, there's I say that not to say that just to say that, there's a ton of very smart, educated people who need opportunities. And a lot of these organizations, not necessarily the ones that I just mentioned, but here in Omaha, a lot of people have, they have diversity and inclusion boards. They talk about diversity and inclusion.
Mm,
Some of the people in the diversity and inclusion don't necessarily, they're not necessarily minorities. They're not representative of who they're trying to recruit. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I just feel like it's a conversation that's been had, and it's a conversation that keeps going on, and it's not unique to Omaha. I think it's something that's across the country where people are always talking about, hey, how can we get more people? How can we diversify our workforce? How can we, reach out in the community? How can we be more inclusive and deliberately, um, following up and actually implementing these policies, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's getting more minorities in C-suite positions or in on board positions. I don't know. People talk a lot. I have not had the opportunity to see a lot of it actually being walked. So that's my experience in a nutshell.
Ooh, man.
Sorry, that was loaded.
No, I mean, not at all. I mean, that was great. I totally agree. I feel like I think Omaha's just now getting to the point where they're really starting to have like these important conversations. And I feel like they probably don't really know how to go about it in like the right way. Like, I don't know if there's like a right way to be more diverse and inclusive, but I feel like I've seen examples of like good, like a people going about it the right way. And then I've
Mhm.
seen like a lot of examples of people just going about it like just in a completely just off-putting and like almost like disingenuous way.
Right, right. And that's hard. It's one of those hard things to do. I mean, companies struggle, even the biggest companies struggle. Google, Uber. I mean, we see that across the board, the stories that come, right? But I think when you're in a small community like Omaha, and I say smaller just because I've lived in bigger cities, I've lived, in bigger states, and I think like you have an opportunity, and Omaha particularly, Lincoln, not so much, but kinda also. I mean, I think there's a lot that can be done, but it also really takes like a genuineness, right? And like from the top to, so not tokenizing people. Like we don't want that, right? Like don't get me
Exactly.
wrong, I'll take it if they give it. Sorry.
Oh my God. I mean, it
Look.
doesn't feel the best, but then it's like, okay, if I have access to this position, like,
Exactly.
okay, let me get in there, you
Well,
know?
and especially not badly. Like you and I know tons of people in our circles who are brilliant. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? They're brilliant, but people don't get those opportunities. I just ran into a guy the other day at someone's birthday, and we were talking about a company here in town. Not going to mention names. Um, and he was talking about, oh, there's not a lot of black folks in tech. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Hmm.
go to Metro Community College, go to Bellevue, go to UNO. Like, half the people who are graduating are either in medical professions or in IT, right? In
Exactly.
tech. Like, who are you? Like, where are you recruiting from? And where are you looking for these people? Like, you're not running in the right circles, right? Like, get a seat at the right table. Like, it might be as simple as that, right? And removing some of those implicit biases, or not necessarily implicit, right? Because generally people like to be around and hire people who look like them. It's something innate, it's in there, it's inherent, and so you have to constantly fight that, right? um, and say,
Definitely.
I'll give people a chance, even if they're not necessarily at here, here, here. We can maybe help them get here, 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 so they can, be a better fit. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the first step is also just recognizing that you like if you look around your office, like being able to see that everyone looks the same. like being able to notice that and realize that, something might be wrong. Like, I feel like that's like the first step, like not being okay with that. And then, really putting in, like the work
The work.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Man, there's so much work to do.
I know.
So what do you think, like Africans like in Omaha can do to really get into these positions that aren't being filled by them? Like, is there something different we need to do? Do we just need to put ourselves out there or network more? Like, what do you think? Is there anything we can do to kind of change that?
I would be remiss if I were to speak for the entire African diaspora in Omaha, but
Yes, right.
from, if I had to, thank you. I would say, there's a couple of ways that people can really put themselves out there. One is networking, right? And one of the things that, is hard for folks is some people work multiple jobs, people have kids, like, you know, um, it's kind of hard to make it to some of these, networking opportunities that are smack dab in the middle of the day or at 5 p.m. when you have to pick up your kids or.
Totally.
Um, so I think companies, people, organizations, things need to be done just a little bit differently to where we do have like this strong networking community. So for example, I know there's the Urban League of Nebraska has a young professionals program, so does the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And I know there's like other loosely formed organizations of young professionals. Um, there just needs to be a little bit more deliberate like networking and just cross sharing across different platforms. I don't know that there's enough of that. I don't know that the traditional model necessarily works. Um, so just finding and then the other thing, because I said it's multifaceted, right, is for example, you're working for a great organization. I don't know what the composition of demographics is at your organization, but you're in a good position. uh, One of the things I think we chatted about like loosely last year, or maybe it was this year at an IB Black Girl event, was um, a lot of people move away. I know at least 5 people who are moving away, Black folks who are moving away from Omaha for better opportunities in places that are more diverse, right? And that's one of the things because people always talk about, well, how do we keep the brain in? Well, get more people. How do you get more people? Well, if you have a do and you have a Judy, then ask them, right? Like, hey, do you know people? Like, have people come in and like I said, like for some of the requirements, they're just so, I wouldn't say restrictive, but at some point, like there could be internships, there could be open positions, there could be things that organizations and companies do to kind of bring people along and groom them along and be more deliberate. So that way you are creating a pipeline of future, career professionals, whether it's in your company or a different company, but just giving folks that, because, not everybody necessarily knows how, you know, things work in corporate or things work in nonprofits or whatever it is. So just, I feel like there are many ways that people can do that are not the traditional ways if they are committed, right? And then when I referring people, I have friends who have been looking for jobs, and I'm like, hey, I know a guy. Like, you need to talk to this person. Like, I will link you up.
Nice.
'Cause if I'm not, I'm not a techie, even though I pretend that I am. In this life, I was. But the more the more diverse a place is, the more companies are embracing. I mean, it's for their good, it's for the community's good, it's for everybody's good. So I
Mm.
think people just need to work a little bit more than they are and put a little bit more genuine effort
Oh,
into
yes.
that. And it's not a one-way street, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
just organizations. Like I put myself out there, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
been going to events in this community for years since
Mm-hmm.
I've been here. And believe it or not, like people are like, I've seen them for years. I've watched them or been in their events and nobody noticed me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Until I was in some other platform and they're like, "Oh, so good to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, oh,
Like we've met.
we've met like 6 times." Yeah, sure.
Oh my gosh, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah. But
uh,
take it with a pinch of salt and I'm like, you know what? Like I kind of shrug it off and I'm just like, okay, great.
mm,
So people really need to start connecting with people and sitting at those right tables. Like whether if you're an African, if you're interested in tech, find those tech groups. Yes, you might you might not necessarily find a ton of people that look like you,
mm.
but you being there, you bringing other people who are like-minded, other people who are interested in that. That's how we disperse that homogeneous collection. So anyway, that's just an idea.
Judy is so awesome, y'all, and I absolutely love what she had to say about the need for communities and organizations to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about their diversity and inclusion efforts, and also just what she had to say about the importance of networking and putting yourself out there even when you might be, the only person in a room that looks like you, using that as not something negative, but something that you can use as an opportunity to bring people along with you that normally wouldn't be in those spaces. So absolutely love that conversation. The next part of our talk got more into Afromaha and the work she's doing here in the Midwest, specifically Omaha, Nebraska. So here's Judy with more about Afromaha.
So Joubel is the co-founder of Afromaha, and Joubel is from Togo. Joubel and I met, I think it was actually the summer that I moved here in 2010, and we met through. I think we were in Benson for some event. I was with a friend of mine who's now since moved. Super smart, um, super smart, and she's moved to Kansas City, unfortunately.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I know. And we met in Benson. There was an event, and we were just like, his vibe was so amazing. He's got this like super engaging personality. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we were talking, and being that the last state I'd lived in when I was in the US was Maryland, Maryland's super active. I mean, it's got a ton of minorities, just a very diverse population. There's stuff that's always happening. I'd lived in California, you know what I mean? So I'd
Mm,
lived in places um, where there was a lot of cultural offerings, right? And
mm.
I moved to Omaha and I was just like, oh my God, this place, ugh. Um,
Oh my
and
God.
no, no. I mean, I didn't like being here, because one, the circle I was in was extremely limited.
Mm,
And I didn't know anybody. We'd moved here, without. I mean, my ex-husband's family lived here, and I'd been here to visit before, but that's very different than living somewhere. You know what I mean?
mm, mm.
I couldn't find somewhere to do my hair. I didn't know where to go. Like, ugh, it was a mess. And so when I ran into folks, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, yay! There's Africans here! Like, this is amazing." Um, and I found out about the African Nights. So there used to be African Nights at Blue Martini, which has now changed to Wow. It's a dance club like on 107th and Pacific or something.
Okay, I think I remember that.
Exactly. So
Mm,
I started going there like on Sunday nights because I was so desperate and like thirsty for like communion,
Mm.
with like my Africans. And I would see Joubel there, and Joubel started doing parties at House of Loom, which used to be downtown. He used to do a whole series of like African experience, and it's like
Yes.
food, dance, fashion, a little bit of curation of those different elements and kind of bringing folks together. But it's at night, right? I have two kids. My mom was living with me at the time, so it was much easier to have an in-house babysitter. Woo woo! Thank God for African moms. Um,
Yes.
um, but at some point, I was like, I love doing things. I used to take my kids out all the time, and I'm just like, there's just nothing, like nothing, right? Um, that was engaging, that was bringing folks together. And when I went to school in Missouri, I mean, I was very involved in the African Students United, right? The Association of African Students, basically,
Mm.
and the International Students Association, and I'd had a little bit of that, right? Even in Springfield, Missouri, which is like a small town, right? And not to have something similar in Omaha was just eating at me. I was like, man, we got to do something. Then I moved to Portland for a little bit, and even in Portland, like people were doing stuff. Like the Kenyan community was super active.
Oh,
They,
wow.
I mean, everywhere. And then when I moved back to Omaha, I was like, no, you know what? We got to do something. Like this is insane. Like I want stuff. We want to have things that bring people together, and the African communities in Omaha are very insular to themselves, right? So like
Mm.
the Togolese community is super active, right? Like they have
Yeah.
parties, they have whatever, they have fundraisers, they're doing work back home, like they're very tight knit, and other, the Cameroonian or the Nigerian, but and I had friends, right, from all these countries, and so I'm like going to all their events, and I'm like, man, like why can't we just all come together? Like I just want like all of us together. And
Mm.
the night parties are great, but my kids were two of my kids were born and raised here. They, their experience in terms of like African culture is what I teach them at home and
Mm-hmm.
when we've gone back home, right? But when they go to school, they don't necessarily see other kids who are proud to identify themselves as African, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Who dance or know the same songs that are played in the home, And so Joubel and I were like, let's do something. Because we talked about it like that many years ago. And here I was, fast forward several years ago, we're still talking about the same thing. And every year we'd, kind of meet once or twice a year and be like, man, are we going to do this thing? Let's do this thing. Joubel's a graphic designer.
Mm.
And so he went ahead and did like a whole mock up, right? Of like the flyer. We were gonna have Angelique Kidjo, we were gonna have like the African Children's Choir. Like it was big, right? Like
Nice.
grandiose, like ideas. This is why it's important. Write it down, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Write down what you see in the future. Um, and we just had like all these great ideas. We're gonna do it, food, music, crafts, all that good stuff. And so last year, 2018, which is, I know, 8 years later,
Hey,
um,
nothing wrong with that.
I
Yeah.
know, we were like, you know what? Let's just do this. Like, we are, we're kind of free. And this is like in February. I actually crashed a meeting that he was having with a friend because who also with a friend of his, and I was like, "Well, you're going to meet with Joubel." Oh my God, I haven't seen him in like a while because I was traveling a ton for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then last year, actually 2017, I took a full-time work from home job, and so I was more free. I was just, things had kind of settled in. I was like, all right, I've got a little bit of time on my hands. I'm not traveling like a crazy person. I'm good. And so I was like, I haven't seen Joubel in a few months. Let me come. Do you mind if I crash your meeting? They met. We were at Della Costa, which is rest its soul. God,
Oh, yeah, it
I
closed.
know,
Dang. All the good spots
I know
closed.
what's
Yeah.
is happening. But so we met, and after they finished their meeting, which was super brief, because like Joubel and I just we were like, look, this is the year. let's do it. Are we going to do it? And we're like, this year, it's either now or not. Because last year was the year of just doing it, just do it, right?
Totally.
And you get to that point in your life where you're like, you just need to do it. Like, stop talking about it anymore. Just do it.
So when you were talking, like during those like first few conversations, did you know it was going to be a festival, or did you know
So,
for sure, or?
so we actually, festival was just one of the components of what we wanted to do, right? I love film. I love theater. I'm a thespian. I grew up acting. I loved it, right? And so I've always had an interest in film. We wanted to do an African Film Week. So that's in the works. Yay!
Nice.
Maybe we'll see um, if everything lines up. Joubel is like a graphic designer. He's also a techie. Like, which is, we had a lot of um, ideas of what we could do with Afromaha, right? So Afromaha was always going to be like the entity, and we were going to do all these amazing things under it, right? Fashion is huge. I mean, come on, African fashion beats any
Seriously.
fashion anywhere. Okay. Um, so we were like, we need to do something, and we were like, well, this year let's just start with a festival, right? And mind you, so funny, total side story, right? This was after the Fry Festival. I don't know if you know about the Fry Festival.
Oh, yes, yes, the scam.
Exactly, exactly. And so we were scared of using the word festival, because I was just like, oh my God.
Oh,
Um,
that's so
and
funny.
Ryan, who had actually joined us at that point, was like, man, you guys, Ryan's like the risk mitigator of any conversations we have all the time. And he's like, I don't know about festival. Maybe let's just call it event. We're like, look, it is going to be a festival because that's exactly what we're going to deliver is a festival. Okay. And so we went with it, right? And planning was, when I say mayhem, so I wake up at 5 a.m. Um, and I wake up at 5 a.m. because my regular job, I work with 4 countries overseas, and there's a time difference. So I figure
Man.
if I wake up at 5, I can at least knock out a few emails and, maybe surf, and then, kind of at least be available to have chit chat and Skype conversations with folks and do some work. And then at some point in the afternoon, then I'm free to do like Aframaha stuff, right? And so that's kind of what we did. And when I say we all worked, it wasn't just the three of us. We had Eileen who was helping us. We brought her on to help us with the website because like we're not good. And then we just had people kind of pouring in, right? Like the minute they found out what we were doing, they were like, "Hey, I can help you with this. Hey, I can do your social media. Hey, I can help you with this. I can do." And so all of a sudden, it took off, right? And we were like, "We're doing it. This is the place. This is the." And for the longest time, actually about a month and a half before the actual date, we hadn't even locked in the actual venue.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, no,
Whew.
no. 'Cause we had one venue in mind, uh, and then we had an anonymous sponsor who was like, there is no way you're going to do it there. I will give you this money, but you have to do it at this other place, right? And we were even torn then because we were like, oh my God, that's so much money. Right? And then I met with like a friend who works at Lutheran Family Services, and she was like, look, don't please, just do it somewhere like in the heart of Omaha. Not that the first location was bad at all. Actually, the first location is very well known
Okay.
to within the African community, right? Scandal Hall, Crown
Ah.
Street. And we've done events there. I love it because it's a place that Africans congregate a lot. It's a place that, kind of people know. And so if you do anything, people wouldn't be getting lost and calling for directions or whatever.
Exactly.
But we really wanted not just to celebrate the culture, but to share it, right? And in order to share, sometimes you kind of need to go, you know what I mean? To be in a place that is accessible, more accessible for all, right? And so that's what we ended up doing. And that is how we were inspired, and that is how we are pushing on to, making it better.
I mean, that's so cool. I feel like it's so awesome to see Afromaha and just like see all the, amazing events and things that you're able to put on, because prior to you all, like, there wasn't too much, happening. So I think for people to have like a space to go to like,
Mm-hmm.
see people that look like them and, just feel like at home, I feel like is like super important.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yes, Omaha
And
is definitely
it's picking
thankful.
up. Yes, thank you. No, and you know what? We could do the work, right? And we could put in all this effort, but unless the community actually, kind of came out and people embrace that, like, it wouldn't happen, right?
Mm,
And so that's something that we're very cognizant of, is the fact that, hey, we love putting on these events, but it's not just a matter of putting on events, it's a matter of a platform for visibility,
mm.
right? Just here in the city, because every time I tell people these like 15, upwards of 20 plus thousand Africans in Omaha, people are like, what? Where? I'm like, well, open your
Like they're
eyes.
there. We're here. So
Exactly, we're here. We're you just lump us in, or you just don't pay attention or don't know where to look,
mm,
right? Um, and so we're super stoked that everyone's not everyone, like, as many people as we're reaching, and we're still doing outreach, right,
mm.
to the different communities, African communities that are in town, and just saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Would you like to be part of it? Um, this is where we're planning on going, and we just keep putting out those events. You see kids, like, if you saw kids last year at the festival, they were having a blast, right? And
Totally.
dancing and like in their little African outfits, right? And all of a sudden, it's okay, it's cool, because look at all
Mm-hmm.
these other kids who are doing the same thing and all look like us and kind of know the same dances and the same food, right?
That
um
that's so important, especially like for a young person,
right,
growing up and probably not seeing too much of, their culture or themselves like in spaces and things.
right.
So I wish I had Afro Maha when I was younger, because it was definitely a struggle.
Mm,
So,
yep.
what do you think people can expect at the next festival on September 14th?
Well, so this year we moved the event to a Saturday. Last year was on a Sunday.
Mm,
Um, well, because we couldn't secure a Saturday, but we moved it to a Saturday this year, which means obviously, Saturdays are primary.
mm,
Um, we have increased the number of vendors for food, for, crafts, for clothing that are going to be there. We have like more games for the kids. The park is set up in that, and that's one of the other reasons that we kind of settled on it, is it has, you know, kid friendly areas. It has wheelchair accessible, sidewalks and all that good stuff. So, it's just more accessible for a lot of people.
mm.
Um, and we also have some very, very exciting performances this year.
Okay.
So not just local, we are sprinkling a bit of other states and international flavor. Yes, we are.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Oh,
we are.
that's so exciting.
Yes.
Ooh. And
Very
when
exciting.
when will you start to kind of announce like who all is going to be performing, or have you already started?
So we are starting this weekend.
Okay.
Um, and we're just going to be dropping them um, until the day of. Well, not the day of. We'll obviously publish like the full schedule of the full lineup of performers here, like right before the festival. But
Mm,
yeah, we're gonna start dropping them, and we're really happy to be collaborating with folks here in town. Um, and not just Africans, but African Americans. We've invited Afro Latinos. So, anyone who identifies, right, within
yes.
that spectrum of Afro. right?
Yes.
Pan-Africanists at heart, and we want everybody to come enjoy themselves, have a good time. We actually have vendors coming from us, Kansas City, Iowa.
Wow.
I know I have no idea how they found out about it, but they did, and they are
Dang.
coming. People are excited, so we're like, hey, you know what? Um, you put it on, people will come, right?
Totally. Totally.
Exactly. So, and it is free of charge,
Yes.
which is very important to mention just because
Mm.
we didn't charge anything last year. We're not charging anything this year. The funding and the ability to put on this festival is primarily sponsorship funded,
Mm.
right? We've gotten a lot of support from the community, from small businesses, African businesses, other businesses, from individuals who believe in the mission, because we're here to connect people. We want to help foster creativity. I don't know if you saw, we just finished the African Fashion Week. The
Yes.
creativity, was just off the
It
charts,
looked
right?
so beautiful. I
Like,
was so mad I had to work that
no
night, but
worries. It was amazing. It was, and I'm not saying that because we organized it. I was even in awe, when I was looking at like some of the designs, and I'm just like, I need that brain. Like, I don't have that brain, and I wish I had that brain.
oh my
But I'm
gosh.
just glad that we have a platform to allow people with those brains and those talents and creativity to actually showcase their stuff, right?
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that and um, we have budding, videographers and people who want to do film and people who are interested in different things, right? And just being able to allow for the local singers, dancers to come showcase their stuff is really important. But more so is just, especially in these nascent years, right? Like it was
Mm.
important for us to maintain, like to remove any barriers to access, right? And
Definitely.
some folks might think, well, um, if you charge, then there's, a value attached to it. Yes. But more importantly, if you create this particular platform, like it's really important for us to, like I said, not just celebrate, because we can come and have a huge celebration and we'll have a blast, but we want to share it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we know for a fact that we don't necessarily have the visibility of other communities in Omaha or in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And so by keeping it open and keeping it free to where people can come and interact is also really important to us. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to charge next year, so don't get
Right.
it twisted.
But yeah, especially what you're still starting out and really trying to like, you know, just build awareness, of
Exactly.
you guys just existing and just being there for people. So
September 14th, it starts at 2, it goes to 10. It will be
nice.
beautiful. I'm so excited, honestly, and I'm terrible at keeping secrets. Like I'm terrible at keeping secrets, right? So I was so excited to where I wanted to like just post everything, and they're
Right.
like, Judy, get your finger off the keyboard.
Oh
So
my
I'm not
gosh.
allowed to do posting for now. So someone else is going to do it who knows how to stagger and
And kind of
just
tease the
tease.
event.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice. That's so cool. And like, I think one last question I had was like, if someone, let's say, is like listening to this and they live in a city where something like Afromaha does not exist, like, what would you like say to that person? And what do you think they should do first? Like, what's step one in like creating like a platform like Afromaha?
I would say find like-minded individuals, right?
Mm.
It's really important that you have like-minded individuals. Look around, see if there are people that you can collaborate with, right? Because even for us here, we looked around, we're like, well, who can you do this type of work with? Who is passionate about this stuff? Um, and people might not think there is a need, right? But there's a need.
Mm.
Um, and I am a strong believer in that if the platform is not there for you, right? then you go ahead and you create your platform.
Yes.
You know, because for the longest time, I think, um, you know, people will sit back and be like, "Oh, I wish it was like this," or "I wish we had this," and I'm just like, you know what? We're gonna create this. Like, no, we're done. We're gonna create this because we have the brains, we have the passion, we have the love for it, right? And so there's
Yes.
nothing stopping us. Like the funding, this is what we do: is we chase it, right?
Mm.
And you find it, and there are people out there and organizations out there, you know, like I said, Afromaha, for the most part, almost exclusively last year and even this year, has been funded and continues to be funded through sponsorships, through corporate sponsorships. So a lot of those companies who are trying to walk that walk that we were talking about being deliberately diverse, you know, diverse and inclusive, right, are reaching out and saying, "Hey, how can we support this? Because we want this. We love the vibrancy of what you're doing in the city, and we need that. And how can we get amazing humans from this pool to come and work with us?" You know what I mean? So that kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of looking at non-traditional ways of whether it's recruiting or bringing people to the table or talking to people and finding out, hey, what's happening and how can we be part of some of these things. So find those people. They are there in your community. So if
Yes.
you're, you know, just find them, find people who want to do things, who are committed, and who will, you know, go the distance with you.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree with what you're saying about, if you don't see something that you want, you know, create it. No one
Hmm.
else is going to go out of their way to create like a space for you. So you have to, be the one to really just do it.
Hmm.
So that's so cool. And is there anything, I know you mentioned like African Film Week being possibly like a
Hmm.
thing. Is there anything else that's like kind of inspiring you right now?
Well, yeah, we always want to um, be able to find ways of giving back, right? And we try and reach out to folks here in the community with different things and people who are doing different initiatives. I mean, it would be amazing if, you know, some of the work that we're doing can spread, right? And not just spread, but be self sustaining to where it can be a model to where people can take and do, right? And be able to, you know, if they're able to charge and be able to sponsor folks, because like I said, like even with the fashion, like there are people who are so talented. I know a guy here in town, David. He's an amazing artist from South Sudan, you know, does great work, David Depp. And you know, I look at him and I'm just like, when I see opportunities, I'm, you know, I'll hit him up and be like, "Hey, here is this thing." Or other folks who, you know, NPR was having like a a podcast for kids or something, and I sent it to like the Somali group because I know there's a few kids there who, you know, do spoken word and poetry and
Nice.
are really interested in that, you know. So I feel like we are doing a little bit of work in terms of like the entertainment, but really what we want to do is create these connections, like be a connector, right? And these ways of giving back, whether it's monetarily, but whether it's like the opportunities and the platforms and those connections that people might not necessarily have access to, right? This whole social capital, right? And being able to kind of get people together and put people in places of where they can be able to flourish. Like you give them that little shove, give them that little platform, and they're able to soar. That's what we want to do. For African Film Week, you know, we'll see. We're working on it. We've collaborated with Film Streams here in town. They are an amazing organization. We're hoping to collaborate with them more. I mean, we did some work with them for Rafiki, the Kenyan film,
Yes.
right? And just getting it shown here in Omaha, which was like amazing.
That's so
Um,
cool.
right. And they showed Liana, they showed I Am Not a Witch. They are showing an amazing film actually the week right after the festival. So,
Oh, whoa.
and it's a film out of Kenya as well. I mean, there's no bias, right?
Right. Just, just
Look.
throwing that in there. But
No, but yeah, they are going to be showing Supermodo, which is like amazing. Like, think, oh, I don't even know, after futuristic, think
oh,
exciting, think sci-fi. I mean, and those are the stories that we want to tell. We really want to tell through Afromaha and through every single thing that we touch. We want to tell African stories. We want African stories to be told. We want African lives to be seen, to be appreciated, to be touched, right? Um,
yes.
so we're very happy. We're going to partner with folks out there, House of Afros, Capes and Curls, so just
Nice.
excited to be partnering with folks who, like I said again, like-minded individuals or like-minded organizations. That's who we want to partner with, and that's who, you know, in any work that you do, you should look to partner with. So
I'm super excited to see just, where Afro Maha is going to go. And like, I just want to say, like, you inspire me. And like, it's just so
ah,
cool to see you do
yeah.
your thing. Like, I feel like I haven't had too many like role models of, you know, just or examples of people doing like things that I would like to do.
Hmm.
So just like seeing you like create these things and just, is just super inspiring. So
No, thank
yes.
you, dude. Thank you. And not just. I mean, I'm very flattered that you say that, but I want to tell you that you inspire me and you inspire the folks, right?
Oh
And
my.
you've come out, you've stepped out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And you are in spaces and you're opening up spaces for other people. And that's really important, right? Um, it's really important. It's important work. It's as important as the work that needs to be done is that someone somewhere is willing to open a door for somebody else,
mm.
you know. And so I just want you to go with that, even as you go in your amazing adventures. Just knowing that we can all do a little bit to change the trajectory of someone else's path.
Yeah, I feel like as long as that's like if you mean well, like I
Hmm.
feel like you're bound to, help the next person and,
Right.
you know, inspire them, even though you may not think that, what you're doing is that inspirational. So thank you again, Judy, for being one of the first guests on Dear Diaspora.
Thank you for having me. I'm super honored that you wanted to even interview me, and I'm not even saying that from like a bad, I'm not
Oh,
bashful at all most of the
oh.
times, but really I appreciate it, and I appreciate that you thought of that. And to everybody else, any young millennials across the diaspora, who are thinking of doing things, who are wanting to do things, just do it.
Thanks again for tuning in to the first episode ever of Dear Diaspora. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Judy Kiagiri as much as I did. Be sure to follow Afromaha on the interwebs, social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and you can visit their website at afromaha.com. And also just be on the lookout for more information about the festival happening September 14th in Omaha, Nebraska. Thanks for listening to Dear Diaspora. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. You can find us on Instagram at Dear Diaspora or visit our website at deardiasporashow.com. Thank you and talk to you next week.